You know, we have this topic, war as the threat for democracy in Europe and in the world. In this very moment when we are having so great time together, we have air alarms in Ukraine all around the country. So, you know, we cannot forget about that, and we need to talk about that, and we need to use every opportunity to talk about, you know, our victory. So I will invite my dear guests of the panel discussion. Professor Hans-Heinrich Justenhofen. He's the director of the Institute for Theology in Peace from Hamburg, Germany. Thank you very much. Ambassador Robert Brінklі. Robert Brінklі, you know, was the ambassador to Ukraine. He knows very well Ukraine. He's supporting very much Ukraine. And he was also on board of directors of the university, as well as many other. Mr. Рафала Дуткевича, another member of the board of the university. And I also invite the president of the university, Metropolitan Archbishop of Philadelphia, of Ukrainian Catholic Church in the USA. So, you know, as usual, I will ask a few questions, but I encourage you very much to prepare your own questions. You will have a chance to, we will take them. And, you know, my first question will be, maybe I will start with you, Professor Justenhofen. You are, you know, a great expert on Ukraine. How would you define the threat that this war brings to Europe and to the world?
Let me put the question just the other way around. Why is Putin threatened? And it's the fight for freedom. And I think, and this is, I think, is very important. The fight for freedom, what the young people on Maidan are standing for, and what the Ukrainian nation now is so desperately but successfully fighting for, is much more than just the choice to buy what you want or to go where you want. It's freedom means a lot more in the sense of Christian theology. That's what I'm standing for. Freedom in that sense means that we are fulfilling a call that each and any of us has received by God. And in that very sense, as for example the prophet Isaiah says, I have called you by your name, means that every single person is meant to give an answer with his life by this gift, which is incredible. It's the gift to be an important person, to be what we call a Christian human being that has received his gift, or her gift, to be answered with her life. And that is the deepest root of what we call freedom. That we, with our free will, take that responsibility and answer to that call, and take the responsibility not only for ourselves, but for our others. And that means that is the political dimension of freedom. So the freedom of the free will has immediately a consequence to the political autonomy of our society, of the fight for autonomy, of the idea of designing the common life on the basis of what we call Christian values. And I think if we look at it from that point, it is absolutely clear what the Kremlin, what Putin is fearing. Exactly that people want to be free, want to follow their own will, and this is exactly the opposite of what the autocrats want. And this is the reason why, to my opinion, why Putin waged this war, started this war, and this is why we have to stand against it.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Brінklі, I will also ask you, to...
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be here for this event. Russia's war in Ukraine is clearly unprovoked aggression and a serious blow to the foundation of international law and must be condemned. Perhaps less obvious is why it is a threat to democracy and freedom in Europe, but that is the essence of the matter. First of all, Ukraine is a democracy. The people of Ukraine, since 1991, have freely expressed their will. In December 1991, in the referendum, 92% of Ukrainians were in favor of an independent Ukraine, with majorities for independence in every region of the country, including Crimea. The people of Ukraine wanted, and still want, to decide their own governance and their own future. And that's been confirmed by a series of free and fair elections and peaceful transfers of power from one administration to another. Perhaps the exception was 2013 to 14, when the elected President Yanukovych went back on his election promise to bring Ukraine into association with the European Union. And after ordering beatings of innocent protesters and later indeed killings in the Maidan, he fled from Ukraine. Ukraine is not a perfect democracy, but which democracy is? Winston Churchill, you may remember, said that democracy is the worst form of governance except for all those other forms tried from time to time. Now, Russia sees Ukraine as especially close to itself, often describes Ukrainians as little brothers, mala Rossiya. So the shining example of democracy and freedom in Ukraine has been particularly worrying for Russia's rulers. What if the Russian people demanded the same freedoms, which in fact they had tasted in the 1990s? Under Putin, Russia's rulers have reverted to the old imperial controlling mindset. Russia's neighbors must either be friendly or be subjugated. And they've demonstrated this in Moldova, in Georgia, and Belarus, as well as in Ukraine. That is why Russia must lose its war in Ukraine. If Russia gets away with aggression in Ukraine, it will pose a continuing threat to other neighbors and to freedom and democracy in Europe as a whole. That's why Ukraine's valiant struggle to defend its people and its land is the shared struggle of all who care about the freedom of our peoples to choose who rules us and what is our future place in Europe and the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So maybe I will ask everyone, to reflect on this topic, war as the threat for democracy. So, that we hear all of your perspectives. Mr. Rafal?
Boris, go ahead. Go ahead. Ale to prosiłbym, żeby ktoś przyniósł słuchawki dla pana profesora, tak. bo ja będę chciał powiedzieć o paru rzeczach po polsku. Borys rozumie znakomicie po polsku. Ponieważ chciałbym, żeby mniejszość polska też była reprezentowana w tym panelu. Zacznę od tego, że mam państwa wszystkich bardzo serdecznie, i panelistów, i słuchaczy, pozdrowić od pani premier Hanki Suchockiej. Pani premier miała być z nami, ja miałem ją odebrać dzisiaj z lotniska. Niestety doświadczyła drobnej kontuzji i nie mogła przylecieć z Warszawy, ale bardzo serdecznie państwa pozdrawiam. Po drugie, ja zawsze jak się pojawia temat rosyjski, to dzisiaj to czyniłem też na spotkaniu z absolwentami uniwersytetu, zawsze przywołuję moją ulubioną anegdotę która charakteryzuje, jak sądzę, też dzisiejszą putinowską rzeczywistość. Otóż rzecz zdarzyła się po I wojnie światowej, kiedy tyczono granicę pomiędzy Polską a byłym Związkiem Sowieckim, czy jak my zawsze w Polsce mówiliśmy, Rosją. I komisja, która fizycznie tę granicę tyczyła, stwierdziła, że granica będzie przecinać pewne gospodarstwo chłopskie. W związku z tym pomyśleli, że warto byłoby ją przesunąć, tę granicę. W którym kierunku jednakowoż? No, zapytamy gospodarza, zapytamy farmera i pytają gospodarza: gospodarzu, potem jak granica będzie wytyczona, to chcielibyście mieszkać po polskiej stronie czy po rosyjskiej? On natychmiast powiedział: po polskiej. Proszę, dobrze, to przesuniemy granicę 50 metrów na wschód, ale powiedzcie nam, proszę gospodarzu, dlaczegoście się tak szybko zdecydowali na mieszkanie po stronie polskiej? Na co gospodarz powiedział, że charakterystyczną. Wyżej, dobrze. Powiedział bardzo charakterystyczną. Mówią, że w Rosji zima jest sroga. To, wyżej, dobrze. I teraz poczynię uwagę, która nie jest uwagą o rozwoju demokracji, ale jest pewną istotną, wybiórczą uwagą na temat Ukrainy i planów Putina. Częstokroć, jak przytaczam dane, które Państwu przytoczę, to nawet mieszkańcy Ukrainy nie zdają sobie z ich sprawy. Proszę Państwa, Ukraina z 40 milionami mieszkańców, często bardzo wykształconych i pracowitych ludzi, to numer 1 w Europie, jeśli chodzi o złoża uranu. To numer 2 w Europie, jeśli chodzi o złoża tytanu. To numer 2 na świecie, jeśli chodzi o złoża żelaza. To numer 2 na świecie, jeśli chodzi o złoża magnezu. To numer 3 w Europie, jeśli chodzi o złoża gazu naturalnego. To numer 4 na świecie w całkowitej wartości zasobów naturalnych i to numer 7 na świecie, jeśli chodzi o złoża węgla. Jeśli pomyślimy o rolnictwie, to trzeba pamiętać, że to numer 1 w Europie pod względem wielkości terenów rolnych, to numer 1 na świecie w eksporcie oleju słonecznikowego, to numer 2 na świecie pod względem produkcji jęczmienia, to numer 3 na świecie pod względem czarnoziemu, 25% całego zasobu światowego, to numer 4 na świecie względem produkcji ziemniaków, to numer 4 na świecie, jeśli chodzi o produkcję kukurydzy, numer 5 na świecie, jeśli chodzi o produkcję żyta, numer 8, jeśli chodzi o produkcję pszenicy, numer 9 pod względem produkcji jajek. Ukraina posiada zasoby wystarczające do wyżywienia ponad 600 milionów ludzi. Ponad 600 milionów ludzi. To numer 1 w Europie pod względem produkcji amoniaku, to numer 2 w Europie i 4 na świecie pod względem długości rurociągów gazowych, to numer 3 w Europie i 8 na świecie pod względem mocy elektrowni atomowych, to numer 3 w Europie i 11 na świecie pod względem długości tras kolejowych, to numer 3 na świecie w produkcji systemów lokalizacyjnych, to numer 4 na świecie pod względem produktu eksportu sprzętu do elektrowni nuklearnych i numer 4 na świecie pod względem eksportu tytanu. To numer 10 na świecie, jeśli chodzi o eksport stali. Takim krajem jest Ukraina, kraj, który Putin chce zniszczyć całkowicie, wymazać z mapy świata. Oczywiście nie tylko z tych powodów, ale także z tych powodów Ukraina, niepodległość Ukrainy jest wielkim interesem wspólnoty europejskiej, która musi wspierać Ukrainę zarówno w znaczeniu humanitarnym, jak i w znaczeniu militarnym. To jest absolutny obowiązek państw Sojuszu Zachodniego wspierać Ukrainę także w sensie militarnym. Dla wolności, dla demokracji i dla bardzo dobrze i pozytywnie rozumianych interesów, które chcielibyśmy uprawiać w Unii Europejskiej. Dziękuję.
Dziękuję bardzo. Mam nadzieję, że porozmawiamy o tym, co możemy wszyscy zrobić, tak, dla Ukrainy. Vladyko, what is maybe your perspective of seeing the war as the threat to the whole world?
Dear friends, the world has never been so Ukrainian. Wroцлав hasn't been so Ukrainian. And in fact, for better or for worse, Ukraine seems to have become the epicenter of global change. The European Union, just a few years ago, embarking on a journey filled with doubt, is stronger than ever. NATO has 2 new countries that want to join. The global economy has been shaken. Billions of people feel the Ukrainian war in their pockets. Suddenly, and Рафала Дуткевич's statistics explain this, suddenly people have come to understand how many people in the world are fed by Ukraine. And the food supply in North Africa, particularly in the Middle East, has been put in danger. The ecology will probably improve. Wars actually are very damaging to the ecology. But after realizing the failure of Wandel durch Handel, Germans are determined to become self-sufficient in terms of energy. And we know when Germans finally do decide to do something, and we are waiting for their airplanes, not only their tanks, they get it done. And so Germany will develop ways of assuring renewable energy. And this will have broad influence throughout Europe and globally. We can enumerate other ways in which the world is changing. Not only because of Putin's aggression, but more importantly, because of Ukraine's resistance. Because if Ukraine had not resisted, if Putin had succeeded in a matter of days, weeks, or even months, people will have turned the page and it would say, let's get back to business as usual. There are still some countries, even European countries, some represented in our audience, who have to arrive at an understanding that we are not going back. And most of all, Ukrainians aren't going back. The United States will not become a colony of Great Britain. Algeria has turned its back on its colonial history forever. It will never be part of France. Peru, Argentina, they will not be part of Spain. And Ukraine will never again be a colony of Russia. That is what Ukrainians are saying today. There are 20 wars, approximately 20 hot wars, that are being waged at this time on all continents. There is never a time in human history when somewhere somebody is not at war. And yet, following not only Polish news, but Deutsche Welle, France 24, BBC, other news outlets on a daily basis, I see that every day people want to know what is happening in Ukraine. People are mesmerized by what is happening in Ukraine. And what I propose for your attention is that there is something more than economy, politics, diplomacy, energy, agricultural policy that is being affected. We live in the 21st century. it seems that we have deconstructed almost everything. We have, for the last 2 generations, been in a revolt, sometimes very necessary, a revolution against authority, against established structures, against paternalism, against sexism. We have questioned things that were never questioned for millennia. We have questioned facts. Today, some people speak of facts and alternative facts. Many fear that we live in a post-truth age. And my intuition is that this war, this resistance, this attention to the struggle of Ukrainians has as its source the fact that the people of Ukraine are saying to the currents of the 21st century, not so fast. Everything is not up for grabs. Everything is not transactional. Everything does not go to the highest bidder. Not always does might make right. There is good and there is absolute evil. There is truth and there are lies. And you know what? I'm willing to risk my life for it. And that is changing current discussion and current consciousness on what it means to be a human being. This struggle for democracy, this struggle for human dignity is something that is encouraging, pushing, forcing people globally to consider who they are. And we are right now in a country that understands this struggle. We are in a city that is showing incredible solidarity. Between 200,000 and 250,000 Ukrainians are hosted in this city and in this voivodstvo. We thank you for that. I think I speak in the name of Ukrainians everywhere. In the last year, I visited 12 countries, speaking with refugees, speaking with soldiers, speaking with grandmothers and students, business leaders and priests. Ukrainians are not going to give up. They understand that everywhere there is Russian occupation in Ukraine, there is genocide. Everywhere there is Russian occupation, there are war crimes. Historically, Ukrainian Catholics know that everywhere, every time there is Russian occupation, the Ukrainian Catholic, Greek Catholic Church is liquidated. In a year, in 10 years, in a decade or 2. Ukrainians have no choice. And we are very grateful for those that understand all of these issues, the issues of freedom, dignity, solidarity, the issues of the unity of Europe, and ultimately the issues of what is true and what is false, what is good and what is evil.
Thank you, Vladeko. You know, Ambassador Brінклі is the representative of the country who understands very well, you know, all the values you just mentioned. And I wanted to refer to your letter to Financial Times, your recent letter, you know, where you really encouraged to give more weapons to Ukraine. You know, what do you think? Is it, you know, is enough done? Should it be more? In what other dimensions, you know, we could work to support Ukraine, like university? What could be the role of, you know, humanitarian institutions like our university?
Well, thank you. No, not enough is being done to support Ukraine. I thought I had to write because the Financial Times represents serious and sensible, educated Britons, and generally is very supportive of Ukraine in fighting off the aggression. But in this particular leading article at the beginning of the year, they started off by saying it must be for Ukraine to set the goal and for us to support. And by the end of the article, they were saying, well, perhaps we should support at least up until the February 23rd borders. So I wrote and said, no, you're not following your own logic here. If the president of Ukraine is entirely clear and he has overwhelming support from the people of Ukraine, every time that's measured, what Archbishop Boris was saying, every Ukrainian you talk to, that they want to recover the whole of Ukraine right up to its international borders, then there is no distinction in logic or in justice between recovering the territories as of 23rd of February last year and recovering the territories that were occupied in 2014. So that was what I was saying. I'm glad that somebody read it.
I had to. I'm just kidding. So, Professor Justenhofen, I also, looked deeper into your academic activities, and you wrote, this title, "Can Humanity Overcome War?" And it was some years ago. So what do you think now, and why didn't it work out?
Well, let me first distinguish the notion war. We have a war of aggression that Putin is conducting against Ukraine, and we have a war of defense. And we need the war of defense to overcome wars of aggression. And in that sense, I would say absolutely yes. And as being a grandfather, I look at my grandchildren, and I'm absolutely clear that we have to create a world that we leave to the next and the next two generations that tries to eliminate war. At the same time, I'm absolutely clear that this is something that's almost impossible, but still we have to struggle for that. And one of the prerequisites, this is what we have learned from our own history, is that war of aggression needs to be overcome. And whoever is willing to lead a war of aggression needs to be fought down. This is a lecture that Churchill has taught to Europe in the 1940s. And as a German, let me say I'm grateful for that lecture, that we have learned that. And so now, obviously, there is a group in the Kremlin that has occupied the Kremlin and is not only terrorizing its own people, but terrorizing others. And we need to fight these Putin and his companions down. So that is the only chance to overcome war. So if you ask me, yes, one of the goals that I'm working for is, as an academic, on ways to overcome war. But now we are in a situation where we need to wage a defensive war to overcome war of aggression.
Thank you very much. Panie Rafale, to po polsku?
Jestem.
Dobra. Do pana mam trochę inne pytanie, tak? Chciałam zapytać, jak wam wygląda, zmieniło się te nastawienie Polaków według Ukraińców, czyli Ukraińców do Polaków, i jak pan widzi tą perspektywę przyszłości między Ukraińcami a Polakami?
No to pytanie jest na odpowiedź na pół godziny.
Macie 5 minut.
Powiedziałbym, że otrzymaliśmy bardzo piękną szansę od przyjaciół Ukraińców. Otóż ja bardzo często podkreślałem, że Polska przez długi czas była krajem bardzo katolickim, ale jeśli chodzi o stosunek do uchodźców, niekoniecznie chrześcijańskim. I wojna wywołana przez Putina zmieniła podejście Polaków do uchodźców. Polscy obywatele, polskie rodziny, polskie instytucje społeczne zachowały się, jak sądzę, wspaniale i powiedziałbym, że była to energia obudzona samodzielnie. Oczywiście pewną rolę odegrała ta anegdota, którą przytaczałem na temat srogiej zimy i naszego sposobu myślenia o niektórych wschodnich sąsiadach. To jest po pierwsze. Po drugie, chciałbym dotknąć pewnego innego elementu bardzo krótko, bo my wszyscy będziemy się musieli zmagać z czymś, co ja bym w następujący sposób opisał. Katedra ukraińska we Wrocławiu ma wspaniałą barokową kaplicę. Ta kaplica została zburzona w czasie bombardowania w ostatnią Wielkanoc II wojny światowej. Dokładnie w ostatnią Wielkanoc została zburzona. Odbudowaliśmy ją wspólnie, władyka, myśmy pomagali, w 2010 roku, 65 lat po II wojnie światowej. 65 lat potrzebowaliśmy, żeby dzięki pieniądzom miejskim i pieniądzom europejskim można było tę kaplicę odbudować. Ona została odbudowana. I teraz zadanie, które stanie przed nami wszystkimi, to będzie zadanie odbudowania Ukrainy. Przymknijcie Państwo oczy, zobaczcie obrazki, które widzimy codziennie w telewizji i wyobraźcie sobie, ile to zajmie czasu i jak wielkiej trzeba będzie energii. Ale po to powstała Unia Europejska, żeby tragedia, którą była II wojna światowa, żeby się nie powtórzyła. Unia Europejska będzie musiała zagwarantować odbudowę Ukrainy, a sojusz NATO będzie musiał zagwarantować bezpieczeństwo tej części świata, znów w interesie nas wszystkich. A obywatele i instytucje komunalne, takie jak miasta, powinny motywować Polaków, Niemców, Europejczyków, aby tak się właśnie stało.
No i czy są już pytania?
Nie ma.
Nie ma.
To ja kilka rozdałem pytań, ale...
Już poszli po kawę. So maybe then, Vladyka, to you. How do you know? The biggest issue for Ukraine is now, it's good that the world became so European and so Ukrainian, but Ukraine became less populated. How do you, maybe that's the question more to us Ukrainians sitting here in this room. Many of them living abroad for many years. How would you see our role as Ukrainians to support our country, and what can be done both in Ukraine and outside Ukraine?
As a son of the diaspora, as the son of refugees, I realize how much stories of war and immigration. And if we are celebrating today the inauguration of a project in Wroцлав of the Ukrainian Catholic University, it would be important to note that we would not have this university if there were not Ukrainians outside of Ukraine. At a time when the church was completely illegal, when Ukrainian culture was being suppressed, when Ukrainian national aspirations inside the country had no possibility for development, in the Ukrainian community, whether it was Patriarch Joseph Slipi in Rome or supporters of his on different continents, an idea of a university was formulated, a prototype was created, and a vision was articulated that we at some point will use this university to foster human dignity, democracy, and general cultural development inside of Ukraine. Yesterday I had a meeting with UKUU graduates who are in Wroцлав. There are many, many of our former students living here, studying here, working here in the universities, in the IT sector. And I share with them my hope. I cannot tell them what to do. I cannot give a full program for the millions of Ukrainians that are outside of Ukraine. But I have no doubt that it is possible to make a contribution in Wroцлав to Wroцлав, a contribution in Wroцлав to Poland, but also a contribution in Wroцлав for Ukraine, for the people of Ukraine. History is changing very quickly. We live in very, very dynamic times, and war accelerates historical change. I have deep faith in the fact that God's grace is not chronologically limited. There's no golden age when God was good to people. There's no golden age for life. There's no, I have no nostalgia for the past. I believe that God's grace is descending upon all people. And I think that it is precisely forums like this where people meet, where people share virtues, values, principles, that younger generations will develop projects that will contribute locally and globally. So I asked the Ukrainian refugees and immigrants that are here, you have a great responsibility. You live in a beautiful city. You have peace here. You have a certain degree of prosperity. Come together, work together. Think not only of yourselves. Think not only of the moment, but search for ways in this city, in this society, with your gifts and with your relationships to build. I have no doubt that you can, and that you will.
So I'm ready to give up my mic.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for everyone who joined us today. And I have a question. I'm Sofia Opatska from Ukrainian Catholic University. I have a question to Ambassador Brінklі and Professor Justenhofen. There are a lot of versions how this war can end. And as you can imagine, Ukrainians are discussing it every single day during every single air raid. And there is one of the scenarios is that Russia there should be some processes inside Russia which should help us and which should support collapse of this country from inside. But there is also kind of thought that West is not ready for this scenario. So my question is it true? And what can be the other scenarios? And also, can we expect from the country which does not have respect for human dignity at all? And we see it by numbers of soldiers which are being recruited right now, and there is no any oppression inside Russia for that. Can we expect such processes inside of such authoritarian country? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sophia. I have to say straight away, I do not know the answer. There are many possible scenarios. I think the war is likely to go on for a long time, tragic as that is. I think most people in the West would agree that Russia must lose and Ukraine must win. But if you then push a bit beyond that and say, well, what does that mean? You quickly don't get such a wide agreement. And that's why I think what the Financial Times said was important, that we must listen to what the authorities and the people of Ukraine themselves want and help them to achieve that and give them all the necessary tools to achieve that. As for what will happen in Russia, Russia, because of Putin's gross mistake and miscalculation, has already suffered huge damage and will carry on suffering damage while this war goes on. We know from history that when Russia lost wars in Crimea in the middle of the 19th century against Japan in 1905, there were consequences politically in Russia. But it's hard for me as an outsider to predict what's going to happen, and I think it would be a great mistake for outsiders to try to dictate what should happen in Russia. But I think there may well be consequences.
Yeah, I cannot, I don't have a different position on that. It's absolutely clear we don't know how the war will end. And one point I think the ambassador is absolutely right. I cannot imagine that it will be without any consequences for the political system in Russia. Whether in a year or in 10 years, I don't know. But the gross mistake and the miscalculation and the economic and military and human devastation that this war brings for the Russian society, I cannot imagine that it will be without any consequences.
Głębokość myśli, które mogliśmy tutaj usłyszeć, w jakiś sposób wyjaśnia, dlaczego student dostał się na naszą Politechnikę, a nie mógł dostać się na Ukraiński Uniwersytet Katolicki. Natomiast wydaje mi się, że ogromną wartością tego, co tutaj posłyszeliśmy, to jest ten sygnał, jaki młodzi Ukraińcy walczący na froncie za wolność naszą i waszą, sygnał bardzo wartościowy dla całego świata, że jest granica między prawdą i nieprawdą, że jest granica między złem i dobrem. To jest bezcenny sygnał dla naszego świata, w którym relatywizm i zanikanie tych granic jest dosyć niebezpiecznie powszechne. Ale wydaje się też również... Z góry trzymajcie. Tak? Wydaje się również, że niezwykle ważnym sygnałem dla nas, dla Polski, dla polskiego narodu, ale również dla narodu ukraińskiego jest myśl, że nie wolno nam zmarnować tej wielkiej, historycznej chwili. Pewno najważniejszej od... Tylko z góry, trzymajcie z góry. O tak, dobrze. Ale czy słychać mnie? A zatem pewno najważniejszej od czasów, kiedy tragicznie została Ukraina przekazana w ręce Rosji. To jest wielki moment, jeszcze nie rozstrzygnięty, ale krew młodych Ukraińców umierających za swoją ojczyznę wzywa obydwa narody, abyśmy rozpoczęli nowy rozdział w naszych wzajemnych relacjach, budując pewną i bezpieczną przyszłość dla obydwu naszych narodów. Ale to również jest dobry prognostyk dla całej Europy i pewno dla całego świata. Dziękuję bardzo.
My name is Irina, I'm from Georgia, and my question is, first of all, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude for the shared wisdom and amazing examples of soft power and human kindness. And at the same time, let me ask you a question that is related to the city we are in, because Wroцław is uniting a lot of people from different, not only countries, but dimensions, and this time, if there are new strategic plans related to the city, which was the platform of global project, which was Wrocław Global Forum, and the Ukrainian Catholic University, and if this is the future steps for new strategic plans based on this city. Thank you very much.
Okay, you know, because there was a conference organized in Wrocław called Wrocław Global Forum about the transatlantic context. And the issue we stopped to organize it in Wrocław was very simple. President Trump was going to visit Poland, and I wanted him to stick to Warsaw, not to Wrocław. Secondly, that was always, I had been the city mayor of Wrocław for 16 years. And my biggest dream was to make the city international. Because to have a creative society, you need to have people, they exchange ideas. You need to have people from different cultures. You have to create an international society. And I don't know the situation now. I believe that there are many more foreigners in Wrocław, but already in the year 2018, in the city agglomeration, we had more than 200,000 foreigners, 50% from the Ukraine, but 50% coming from 124 countries from the world. Most probably the numbers are bigger nowadays. What was very important in the year 2018, the choice for Wrocław was because of the booming economy. We have in addition many refugees nowadays, and this is a different story. But I would say I believe in freedom. I believe people need to have the freedom to move. And what we have to create in the European Union, including Ukraine as well, is to make people from Ukraine coming back, staying somewhere in the Europe, just be free, but thinking about their country. And the issue of being international is, in my opinion, could be helpful in this way of thinking. I don't know if I answered the question you put to us, but that was my vision, and this is my opinion. Do you want to add something, Boris? Not necessarily.
Everybody's experience is limited, and so is mine. 2 weeks ago, President Zelensky visited the Ukrainian Catholic University. And he had a meeting with Father Prach. And he and his assistants were asking, why is this university so different? And one of the reasons is because it's open. Because it's clearly a Catholic university, but it's Catholic in its love and its respect for people. It's open interconfessionally, interethnically, internationally. There's Professor Jeffrey Wills somewhere here. I don't know where he is sitting, but a brilliant man of many means who at the age of 39 retired from his chair in classical languages. He had a doctorate from Harvard, studies in Oxford, and at the age of 39, he learned Ukrainian and became the vice rector of the Ukrainian Catholic University. And it's the contribution of people like Рафал, like Ambassador Brінklі, who are board members of this university, that have made something that began with nothing, a university that has no financial support from the government. No financial support from the government. It made it a place that is attracting the attention of President Zelensky, the man who has more attention in the world than anybody. And he was so interested in this place that 1 week later, he called Father Prach, not knowing Catholic canon law. He called Father Prach and asked him to be Minister of Education of the country. And you accepted? He can't. He cannot. But President Zelensky, 1 week ago, asked Father Prach to be the Minister of Education of Ukraine. Because Father Prach explained to him what this university is about. He saw with his own eyes, and this conviction that openness, fellowship, communion, relationship is not only what a university can be, but it should be at the heart of the mission of a university that forms young people to live in this way. Because it's a invigorating, thrilling, fruitful way to live.
Thank you. So maybe, I would ask other reflections on this role of university.
Yes, it just came to my mind a totally different idea, but it exactly takes up what you have been talking about. UKU is a focal point of what Europe actually is and what makes the European culture. And let me take an example. I've been walking the market of Wroцlawі today, and the Rynek. And it came to my mind, what is the importance of markets for cities in Europe? And you find them in all over Europe, and especially in Europe. And the markets in the cities have been, in the history of our continent, have been the decisive point where the cities developed, because people from all over the country, from far away, came, brought their products, brought new ideas, got new experiences, traded with things that people had never seen, and started new ideas, new visions. So that was the rise of the cities, and that is the rise of our European culture, because it's interdependent. And artists have been walking around, painters have been walking around, professors walked from one city to another, universities were founded, ideas were exchanged. And if you walk the continent from Edinburgh in the north to, let's say, Palermo in the south, and from east to west, in the end, you find what I would call European ideas in all these places. And especially if you are outside Europe, you realize what it means to have a European culture. And what you have been presenting from UKU shows that the university, the Catholic University, is a focal point where, again, and it's so important for the transition that the Ukraine society is going through, is bringing many ideas, is a marketplace of new visions, and is educating people, and so it's Europe at its best.
Thank you. Ambassador Brінklі.
Thank you. And thank you for mentioning Edinburgh. I flew from Edinburgh yesterday, so from the north, but it's colder here, I have to say. It was a great honor for me for 6 years to be on the Senate of the Ukrainian Catholic University. I learnt a lot. I was very proud at how Ukrainian Catholic University has developed, and in just the ways that you were describing to President Zelensky, because it is open. It is what it says it is. It's Ukrainian, it's Catholic, it's a university. And it makes no secret about the way it works. And Archbishop Boris had a wonderful way of describing what the Ukrainian Catholic University is for. In Ukrainian, it's 3 S's. It's служити, свідчити, спілкуватися. In English, it's not quite so alliterative, but to serve, to witness, and to communicate. And when a few years ago, Father Rector asked me if I would help in London to reinvigorate UKU's affiliate, the Ukrainian Institute in London. I gathered some people around to help do that, and we found a new director, and that has grown with the help not only of Ukrainians, but also supportive Brits there. And I think that's something that I'm sure will work here as well, both Ukrainians and Poles working together. But I'd like to just mention somebody who is also in the audience today, Maria Montague. Maria, where are you? Maria is at the back there. When the war started last year, Maria worked absolutely tirelessly, helping Ukrainian refugees, helping British families who wanted to provide accommodation for refugees, and set up schooling in the English language for 300 Ukrainian refugees in London. Now, if there'd been more hours in the day, she would have been able to provide schooling for 3,000, because there were at least 10 times that number who wanted the lessons. But thank you, Maria, thank you, Alessia, and all the others who've worked so hard in London.
Thank you, because... you know, I don't know what to do really, because we have more questions, but we have here, you know, such nice spirit of the role of university. Yes, I would finish. And if you have questions, you just come to any of the speakers that you want to hear their opinion on, and they will
just one remark from my
I wanted to give you word.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, Mr. Minister, I like what you said about the market and the university, because in the past, world was growing because of exchanging of goods. Nowadays, what is crucial is exchanging of ideas. And I would say, in the very tragic situation, we have to deliver goods for the Ukraine, including weapons, but we have to make the university growing to make people able exchanging ideas and create new, free and democratic Ukraine in the European Union.
Great. I think that's, you know, the really great note to finish on. And thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for all your engagements and inputs.